Hi, friends, and welcome to the 8th episode of the Coffee with Demons podcast. On this episode, I was joined by environmentalist and entrepreneur Gage Mruz. Gage is the founder and CEO of Greenstain, which is a company that is eco-friendly with wonderful ideas, goals, and products, all of which we discuss. I can't speak highly enough about my guest for this episode, as Gage is genuine, intelligent, and just an all-around great dude with his head on straight. I truly believe we need more people in the world like Gage, and after listening to number 8, I think you'll all agree with me. So without further ado, episode 8 of the Coffee with Demons podcast with guest Gage Mruz. Enjoy! All right, and we're live. This episode has been a long time coming for sure. I'm definitely a little nervous, but I'm going to introduce my guest, Gage Mruz, from my perspective, and then I'll let him kind of clear things up for you guys. So,
cool.
Gage is an entrepreneur, but didn't study it, and that's something that I want to touch on basically because the first time I saw Gage was the 3-2-1 quick pitch competition at UNL, and he ended up winning that. So for me, I was like, oh, I mean, he has his shit together, which he definitely does. But
from the outside.
Right. And, you know, I minored in it, and I did not do well in the competition itself, and so you're an environmental studies major, and went on to, you know, start his own business called Greenstain, which we'll definitely get into. But Gage is someone who, from the outside, and I hope to show you guys a little bit more like a deeper version of Gage through this podcast. But from the outside, you know, he's very intelligent. He's very aware of consciously about, you know, the environment given Greenstain. And whatnot. So, yeah, like I said, I've been this nervous for one in a while. So it's been a long time coming. I actually asked Gage to come on the podcast before I had recorded even a episode. So this is this
makes me feel good, man.
Yeah,
makes me feel super good.
This is gonna be fun. So I'm gonna shy away from the broad questions, and we'll just kind of hop right into Greenstain. Greenstain's a environmental friendly company that does apparel, plants a tree for every product they sell. I'm going to give the reins over to him to let him explain just a little bit more in depth with what their goal is, mantra, and what you're kind of trying to provide with that company.
Sure. Yeah. So kind of in like a holistic sense, Greenstain is an environmental brand. You know, we're not like an outdoor brand or like an adventure brand. We're focused on the environment. Like that's our main mission. That's our main goal. And so we provide eco-friendly apparel made out of recycled plastic bottles. Like our tri-blend t-shirts have 6, and like this tank top I'm wearing right now has 3. And that's in like a tri-blend material made with U.S. organic cotton, like a tensile modal that's trademarked and kind of helps give it like its shape. And then that roughly a third is that recycled polyester. And so for each of those shirts we will plant a tree in California to help remediate the land from all the wildfires there. More so just to give people sort of that path of least resistance to making an impact. I feel like that's pretty powerful. And yeah, that's mainly the gist of it. In a little bit, I'll kind of talk about like a phase 2 that we're hopefully going to start rolling out. And yeah, just really excited for the future of Greenstain. For those of you that don't know, we launched on March 1st of this year. And so we've been in business for probably about like 6 months officially now, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely a short time, but you've been doing big things. I've seen you talk on, you know, the radio. You've partnered with UNL, the university here in Lincoln, which is super cool, and I'm you know, super stoked for just to see Greenstain, you know, keep going up. So basically, how I kind of knew, or how I found out about Gage is, like I said, from the quick pitch competition. You had launched a version of Greenstain that you said that didn't go over so well.
Oh, definitely.
Did you rethink that, in a whole sense, or was it kind of like take a couple steps back and run with, or just, you know, kind of reformat what you already had?
Sure. Yeah, so the quick pitch was at a really interesting time in my entrepreneurial career. So when I got back for my senior year in August, I was like, cool, you're going to start a business. It's going to be environmentally focused. But, like, what the hell are you going to do?
Right.
And so all of August and September was like, cool, find a company name, write a business plan, find market opportunities. And a lot of that stuff is just a lot of trial and error and just a ton of research, honestly. And so when the quick pitch competition happened, was that like early November or like late October? I think it was late October.
Yeah, it would have been around there.
Cool. So at that time I was like, Great. So my idea of Greenstain is going to be sort of like affiliate marketing for Amazon products, and we'll be sort of like selling tons of eco-friendly products, and we'll be sort of like a one-stop shop where we'll like give you information on problems, environmental problems and solutions, and like different alternatives to like single-use plastics and things like that. But the thing with affiliate marketing for Amazon is that it's not sustainable,
Right.
which is sort of ironic there. But it's the thing with affiliate marketing is that you make a very small percentage commission on the items that you do sell through Amazon. And so for a $4 product, if you're only making like 7%, not a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I pitched at the quick pitch competition. And I kind of like tucked that part of it away and more so sold, I guess, like the vision and the why behind it. And I feel like that is what's driving a lot of successful businesses today, is sort of that why. And I think a lot of people can really seek that authenticity, and they can tell when that's real and when people are trying to fake that authenticity and being like, yeah, I'm going to start something for like a social cause because it's working in some places, but like they aren't truly passionate about that. And I think even though maybe my idea wasn't the most sustainable option for like in a business sense, I think sort of like my passion for the environment really showed in the pitch, which was cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a lot of, that's what people bite on, is that, that passion for somebody, or if somebody has a passion and they're willing to, work at it a little bit harder than others. So let's talk about that why a little bit. I know you had taken a trip to New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So when you were there, you worked on, climate stuff as well. And you had, at that point, did you have any idea that you were going to go this entrepreneurship route, or were you just kind of focused on the environmental side of things?
Totally. So roughly, I would say like my sophomore year of college was like a really big self-growth sort of time in my life. And it was to the point where I was like, cool, like I'm really starting to figure out who I am as a person. I'm surrounding myself with these awesome people who are really bringing out the best of me. Like, cool, this is who sort of I'm becoming. And it felt like my story really started around my sophomore year of college. So going into my junior year, I was like, cool, here are your strengths. Here's what you're passionate about. I ended up switching my major from mechanical engineering to environmental studies that sophomore year. And junior year, I was like, cool, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to change the world? And from there, I was like, well, your strengths very much line up with like an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, the reason I did mechanical engineering in the first place was like I had sort of that engineer's mindset, that problem-solving mindset. And so I was like, cool, you're going to start a business dealing with the environment. That's what you're passionate about. And I was trying to find the best ways to set myself up for success in that arena. And so I reached out to the Office of Sustainability at UNL, ended up getting a job there as a sustainability specialist. And I would go on to work there for like a year and a half. And then I was like, cool, well, this would be a great time to study abroad and like get immersed in a new culture, one that's more focused on environmental sustainability than the U.S. is, and see what you can learn from that culture and bring that back to the U.S. And so when I went down to New Zealand last summer in 2018, I had a game plan. So I was like, I don't know what this business is going to be, but I'm going to find it down there. And that was the goal. And so once I got down there, I started my internship with the New Zealand Green Building Council, and right away was realizing that sustainability was just talked about culturally in a not completely different way than the United States, but it was a lot more authentic and it was a lot more prominent. Like government was talking about it a lot more, and specifically in the building industry, like a lot of people were rallying behind the idea of green buildings and sort of these like sustainability concepts. And since it was such a small company, there were roughly like 16 employees there, I really tried to get my foot in the door and talk with the CEO, Andrew Eagles. So I had lunch with him one day and I was like, look, Andrew, this idea I have for like an environmental company. I think I want to do environmental consulting and help like bigger businesses use less resources and kind of make my impact that way. Like, is it okay if I sit in on like every meeting you have while I'm down here? And he's like, honestly, yeah, like I'm not sure we will allow you to like contribute a lot to the conversation, but like if you want to listen and just, see how we talk as leaders in the industry, like that would be stellar. So that's what I ended up doing. And it was really cool to hear sort of the language they were using and what they were prioritizing. And a lot of the time it was just money. Like they were prioritizing money over the environmental issues and that like side of it. And so that was really interesting. And so from all of that experience, I was down in New Zealand for 11 weeks. And then on the plane ride home is when I had that initial idea for Greenstain, where I was like, cool, you're going to work with your peers and you're going to try to target like high school to college age kids and make the change happen there. Like, I don't think it's going to start with big businesses. Get your foot in the door and change the people around you the best you can, and start local and see what happens.
Yeah, a couple things that stick out to me before I kind of comment on the whole Greenstain thing is I just want to, I applaud you for even, a lot of this podcast has been talking about like goals that people set, or just trying to better the world around them, and not being, not selfish, because I think everyone needs to be selfish in a sense, but you just said how can you change the world, and I think that's such a great thing to, take that on yourself, and you want to do things like that. And even like taking the just wanting to sit in on those meetings even though you're not going to contribute, just to learn. So I think that's awesome, and I think that's
thanks, you really.
A couple more reasons that I wanted you on this podcast. So getting back to the Greenstain thing, so you knew that you kind of wanted to go the entrepreneurship route. What led you to pick Apparel? Was it just because it was like that's everyone needs it kind of thing, like, and it's readily available to be, it's kind of to the demographic that you wanted to sell to,
totally.
Like the college kids?
No, totally, yeah, that makes sense. So after I launched my first iteration of Greenstain in mid to late October, I had like this big social media blast, and then I realized like, okay, like a few of my family and friends are helping me out here, but like this doesn't seem to be sticking super well, and like the amount of money I'm making is not a lot to make this like a sustainable job and career, because that was my goal, is to just build something during my senior year that I could then take over when I graduated. And so I was like, shit, you got to think of something else. Like, this is just not going to work. And so I kind of went back to the drawing board, and I didn't post anything else about Greenstain. Like, if you look at my social media, it's like that post in October and then nothing until like February or March. And that was like weird, because a lot of people were asking me like, hey man, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out.
That's cool. It's a lot of pressure when you do drop something like that, or, you are kind of successful right off the bat, and then it's kind of like a fallback, like, oh, maybe this won't work. So, I think that's cool that you even took that and didn't run away from it, but just wanted to, kind of get into it again and do it better than you had been.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you. And I kind of saw it as more of like a pivot. And so, like you're asking, like the main reason I chose Apparel is I got to thinking of people our age, and what things are trendy and why, and like what people put value into, what impacts people on their day-to-day lives, and more so like what are biggest polluting industries that I could tap into. Like, what are the biggest areas that are contributing to this climate crisis, and like what industries are creating the most pollution, harming our wildlife, creating the most carbon emissions. And one of the top ones that I found was the fashion and textile industry, and that blew me away.
Right, and I think it just you saying that, so I don't think a lot of people are even listening right now, and I definitely didn't know before we had talked. Like, I didn't. You talk about fast fashion, how these companies are just, their carbon footprint is so large, and so if you want to talk about that a little more, sorry to cut you off, but that's just totally. A lot of people don't know.
No, that's a great subject. So, one of the biggest reasons why the fashion and textile industry is one of the biggest polluting industries behind oil is that it takes a lot of resources to make one shirt. When you think of it's weird. The biggest thing when I was getting my environmental studies degree was thinking about like the life cycle of a product or a resource and what all things go into that. So for a shirt, for example, there's fibers in that shirt, but where do those fibers come from? Do they come from another country? Do they then have to be shipped here with a plane? Because that adds to its carbon footprint. Once it's here, do they have to use harmful chemicals or dyes to preserve the colors? And like when you're washing it, like there's so many different facets that go into making just one t-shirt. And just sort of for context, our Greenstain t-shirts use 70% less water than traditional t-shirts, and that's 490 gallons, which is nuts. It takes a lot of water and chemicals and dyes and even like crude oil to make a t-shirt. And so with things like fast fashion, and there are some brands out there like H&M used to be bad about this, and now they kind of have some recycling programs, because I think they kind of realized, I think they're getting a lot of flack for it. But one of the biggest things with fast fashion is that they're overturning styles every like 2 to 3 weeks, because they want new. People buy new stuff, and their clothes specifically just aren't really built to last. Like they will break down, and once you get like a hole in a shirt, you're just gonna throw it away. Like it's starting to become very trendy to reuse certain things, and you see people going to Goodwill and like sewing their own clothes and just making it their own, just to stand out and be unique individuals. But I was reading some crazy statistic that roughly 3/5 of all clothes are either incinerated or ended up in the landfill within the first year of being manufactured, which is nuts. Yeah, and you think about how many clothes that is, it's like, holy shit. But yeah, so like those are either being burned and releasing more emissions on top of whatever it took to create that shirt, and then they're just ending up in the landfill.
Yeah, within a quick time period.
Within a quick time period, yeah, a year. And that's not even like a year after being sold. That's a year after being made.
But yeah, that's even crazier.
Wild.
Yeah. So was there ever like a light bulb that popped in your head? Like, because I go on your website and I see all these statistics that are, crazy good for Greenstain. Like how much less water you use, the amount of, you use recycled bottles, you plant trees, and et cetera, et cetera. So, it's kind of like you just hit the nail on the head with this apparel thing and going, or using this apparel to create awareness of the environment. So, I guess what I'm asking is are you trying to go up and up and up and keep finding levels to this environment and how apparel is, affected, or how apparel affects the environment? Or do you think you kind of just like hit it on the head and this is what you're going to run with?
We had a really positive start, and I think we've got some good traction and momentum. My biggest thing with the whole apparel, so after I figured out that it was, one of the biggest polluting industries, I was like, cool, well, apparel is also like a walking billboard. Fashion has been like the epicenter of culture since like the beginning of time. Like what people wear, like is very much an expression of like their culture and their selves, and like people put a lot of meaning into their clothes. And so I was like, cool, that's a great opportunity to create a company vibe and culture and create something tangible that people can put meaning into, And so kind of pairing that with the actual environmental impact, I was like, cool, let's see if this fucking works. And one of my biggest things with Greenstain that I like about what we're doing is that we put numbers to your impact. I've seen a lot of brands that are like, yeah, we use eco-friendly stuff, or like our products are eco-friendly. And I'm like, yeah, that's sick. How eco-friendly is it? What does that even mean? What does it mean to be eco-friendly? Like, show me the numbers and show me the data.
And sorry to cut you off, but like I was saying, yeah, the green, I implore people to go check out the Greenstain, company as a whole, and, buy the apparel because it's awesome stuff. But check out the numbers as well, because like you said, you're backing it up. You're doing it, and you're backing it up as well. So I think that's, like you said, not a lot of companies are doing that, even if they claim to be eco-friendly.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. My biggest thing is that especially when talking to people a lot, and, I go through a lot of this stuff just because it was my major back in college, but one of the biggest things that's holding people back from making the changes, they're like, well, I'm just one person. And there's like billions of people in this world. How am I going to make a difference?
Right.
And my goal was like, cool, I'll show you. Like, let me get numbers in front of your face. That's like, no, you're doing something, And I always use this expression that like, when you go to the gym, you're not going to see results in 3 days. It's something that takes time, and like exponentially, you start to see that impact, that you're having on your health and your body, and you start to feel it. And like, you look at pictures from a couple months ago and you're like, I physically look different because I'm putting the work in and the time. And I feel like even doing small things like recycling or being conscious of your purchasing decisions, it's not even just like recycling what you have, but like, what are you buying? Do you need that with that certain packaging? Could you say no to a bag? It's very small things like that if a whole community did, you have an entire culture change and a massive impact.
Definitely.
And so like, that's what we really want to put numbers to show people like, no, you're making a difference.
So do you think you'll ever, or has this ever been an idea of yours, is to, look at how many shirts you've sold and then run the numbers back and kind of put those out there? So like, as a whole, you might not think you've done it, or you can't change it individually as a person, but this many people have bought shirts, and this is how it's, impacted the environment. Or
Definitely.
Have you ran those numbers, I guess?
Yeah. So about, I think in like early July, we made a post on Facebook that was like, thanks for all your help. Cumulatively, everybody that supported Greenstain and bought our apparel or helped to plant the trees, this is what you did. This is how many gallons of water you saved. These are how many trees you planted, which is then going to take this much carbon out of the atmosphere in the year time span. And I think we updated those numbers on our website under the sustainability section. We're trying to be really good about keeping up to date with that calculator.
Cool.
Just so people can stay up to date with what they're doing,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So it seems like like I was saying, kind of hit the nail on the head, but I'm sure it wasn't as simple as it, sounds.
Yeah,
there was
definitely.
a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, certainly.
So, a lot of the podcasts have been, surrounded about talking about demons. And, we had talked a little bit before that about how the demons in this story are a little different than, someone else's like mental stability issues. So when we talk about demons today, and not just, I was just going to preface just saying demons, they could be anything. Gage said it best, anything from roadblocks, resistance, struggles you've overcame. And I think it's, you fought back those demons just with, launching that first version of Greenstain, having it kind of dwindle down, and then, figuring out how to do it better. So I think, I think that's awesome. And then, you kind of found the entrepreneurship side. You knew you wanted to do that. You knew you wanted to do it environment, and you like meshed those. And I just, how did you pick up on that, or how did you, see those signs that you were like, oh, this is what I'm going to do?
Totally. I think that all comes down to self-awareness. I think a lot of people aren't exactly sure what they want to do or like what their soul's purpose is, just because they, and this isn't a knock on anybody, like just don't know themselves well enough, in like a very like strengths oriented sense.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that a lot of people, if you just like walked up and were like, dude, what makes you happy? They would say things like, oh, like getting this job, or like my parents want me to do this, or like family. It's like, no, but like take everybody away. Imagine being on an island by yourself. What could you do to be happy, And maybe that's a bad example, but
no, I don't think so at all, because if no one was watching, what would you do to be happy, kind of thing?
Yeah. Like, are you doing what you're doing for social reasons? Are you doing it to make your parents happy? Are you doing it to look cool to your friends, to fit in this sort of social group? Or are you really doing it for yourself, like authentically? And I feel like once you start going about each day and reflecting on that day and being like, oh, well, this made me happy. By the end of the week, you've accumulated like 7 days worth of data where you're like, oh, I know what makes me happy in this certain situations.
Right.
You do that for a month and you're like, well, shit, this version of myself, I now know that these things make me happy because I reflected on that every day. Cool, I'm starting to see some patterns here, Maybe I like when I'm with friends in this environment. Maybe I like when I'm with these certain friends, or like maybe I really like to do art. Like I'm really honing my craft with like painting, things like that. I think like it's all about being aware, and it's the word itself, self-awareness, is being aware of yourself and what you're doing and what you're feeling when you're doing those things.
Definitely.
And yeah, society's just pretty fast-paced. I feel like it's tough sometimes for people to kind of like really tune in.
Definitely. You
see how they're feeling with stuff.
Exactly. And it's not as easy as just, in layman's terms, just being self-aware, because you can't just pick up on things as easy as it seems. Like from the day-to-day basis, it takes a lot more, thinking than, or, looking deeper into yourself. And I think a lot of people, like I might do some things that I think make me happy, but, might not truly make me happy. I guess, if that makes sense,
No, totally.
But it takes a lot of, like you said, it takes a lot of reflection, and it's not just going to happen within a day, which is, I think, puts a lot of people off from the idea of, finding their true self, just because it takes work and they're not like willing to do that. They kind of like the egotistical self, which is, what makes them happy, materialistic things, or just going about their day to day without having to think too hard about, the bigger picture kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of resistance around blocking out the noise and the social pressures of society to do what you want to do. Because if you go against the grain, you're going to notice it,
Right.
Because you're going to start separating yourself from the collective, like this big societal notion of what you should be doing. And I will say that, kind of tying back to this whole self-awareness thing and this whole idea of resistance and demons and challenges, like, I have a lot of respect for the people out there that know their own potential but haven't gotten to that point yet where they have anything to show for it, because that's a very mentally draining place to be. And that's where all of my junior year, I was in that place. Like, I was self-aware to know that I was capable of doing these things, but I had nothing to show for it, you know? And so I would apply for positions and know internally that, like, I have the skill set to do this, but, like, nobody else is seeing that from you. That's a very draining mental place to be in.
Definitely. So do you think that you became more aware, like, after your trip to New Zealand, as in, kind of what you were just talking about, like, you found you knew your potential or what you could contribute, and then I guess, so in New Zealand, were there any profound, like, I know I'd listened to your podcast on how to build an airplane, and you talked about it was just different, like, you found your true self kind of there because you didn't have any of these social norms that you were based in day to day, so you kind of weren't separated. You were separated from family, friends, anybody, so you could be who you wanted to be, kind of thing. Totally. And then coming back, you didn't have to fall into who you were, but it's hard not to when people have the same idea of you as when you left.
Definitely. No, yeah, you're hitting a lot of really good points. New Zealand was a massive turning point in my life. And, like, that's really where things clicked. And, like, I have a tattoo on my arm in a very visible spot because I was like, I need people to see that I'm different physically because I am different from that experience. And I personally need to be reminded of that, And that's why I wanted this to be so visible and so unique specifically to the experience I had down there. But yeah, once you were in a completely new place, like specifically in New Zealand, to the point where, like, the United States is up here in the Northern Hemisphere and New Zealand is, like, the opposite,
right. Completely
Southern
opposite.
Hemisphere, complete other side of the world. So I was like, I couldn't be farther away from my family and friends right now. Like, it took a lot of hours to get here. And once you're immersed in this completely new culture with completely new people who you've never met, you kind of realize that you can be whoever you want to be, and nobody is... Like, what happens down there will stay down there. And, like, you can take that any direction you want. But I took that as, well, cool. Let's try out maybe a new version of myself, you know? Like, I've got this whole self-awareness thing going on to the point where, like, I'm starting to think I know what I want to do. Like, let's really hone in on that. Like, start doing things for you, you know? And it made it a little easier that there was, like, about a 17-hour time change between New Zealand and Nebraska. And so... when cool things would happen to me down there, like, I got a job offer to do some environmental consulting in New Zealand, and they wanted me to basically just, like, stay down there in August and then work for the next year. And, like, I didn't tell anybody about that because I was like, I need to know that those type of situations I'm doing for myself and I'm handling for myself. And then even just, like, going around New Zealand and going to these beautiful places and taking these awesome pictures. It's like, cool. Like, am I going on this hike so that I can send somebody a picture and then get that validation? Like, wow, you're doing cool stuff. I bet that's amazing. Right. Or am I doing it because, like, no, I wanted to go to the fucking top of this mountain and see this awesome view. And, like, once you kind of have, once you're aware of when that might start happening to you, like, there were a lot of situations where I'm like, dude, I'm trying to post something on social media because I'm lonely as fuck and I want validation from other people. Right. And, like, I started getting in those headspaces where I'm like, oh, dude, you got to realize when you're doing that. And so a lot of moments like that happened down there. And I really sort of transitioned into this version of myself that was doing things for myself,
So how do you think how do you think you caught on to that? Or how do you think you realized that, like you were saying, why am I doing these kind of things? Like, because for the person that hasn't traveled or hasn't, not even traveling, but hasn't had, profound experiences that might make them look back. I guess how did you kind of catch on to that?
Totally.
You were doing that.
Meditation. 100%.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And no, go ahead.
All I was going to say is we're about to take a break here, but we're going to jump, right back into that.
Cool.
So,
let's do it.
What's up, everybody? It's Johnny. I hope you enjoy what you're listening to. And I just wanted to say, if you want to be a sponsor for the Coffee with Demons podcast, we would love to have you. Shoot us an email at contact@coffeewithdemons.com, and we will get right back to you. Thank you. All right, so we left off the last segment talking about meditation. So what's your kind of interpretation of meditation? What are the benefits? How do you go about it, kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah, so I think a lot of people have different misconceptions of meditation. Like they think it's just sitting cross-legged and you're just like hoping something happens.
Right.
But the act of meditation itself is noticing what your mind's doing. So it's not like trying to change your mind or anything. It's literally just like, oh, I'm noticing that that's what I'm thinking. And that's kind of when this awareness starts happening. And so like an example I use is that, well, first off, the technique that you use when you do meditation is you're supposed to sit in a comfortable environment, and you're supposed to just let your mind do its thing and then just focus on your breath. And so like that kind of gives your mind something to focus on, is breathing. So like breathing in and then breathing out. And then once your mind naturally starts to wander, all meditation is noticing when it's wandering and being like, all right, come back. It's like a good example I always use is like you have like a dog attached to a pole.
Right.
And that dog is kind of hanging out by you, but then it gets distracted and it runs away, and you're tugging on the leash like, no, come back. Like, come back to center.
And that's exactly how it, kind of like it is.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's exactly what meditation is you focus on your breath. That's when you're at center. Mind wanders, and you're like, nope, I see you. I see where you're going. Just come back. And like not judging yourself like, oh, I fucked up. I stopped focusing on my breathing. That's not the goal. Right. Like you can't judge yourself when you're doing it because it's a practice.
Oh, definitely. And like you said, like it's an act. It's not just something that's going to happen right away or something that just, switches. It's an act. It's something I think about it. Or like you said, people have different views, but a good way that I kind of think about it is like watching the thinker. And that's from this book that I've been reading. But, like you said, noticing what your mind's thinking and kind of separating yourself from your mind, as crazy as that sounds.
No, totally. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so just like with any athletic habit, like you're going to grow from that, and like it's going to become a habit. And so when you do meditation enough, you start to see the effects of meditation when you're not actually like sitting cross-legged meditating. And so that's kind of what started happening to me in New Zealand is I had the time because I had nobody to talk to or hang out with. And I'm like, cool, watch, YouTube videos on educational things, watch a ton of TED Talks, listen to podcasts, read books, and meditate, and like just see what happens, man.
Right.
What's the worst that could happen?
Right.
And so I got to the point where I was meditating every single day, and like I had the time, so I was doing like long hour guided meditations every day. And by like the end of the first month, it would get to the point where like I'm just kind of going about my day feeling lighter mentally, because if say I was like tired or groggy in the morning, I would be like, oh, you're thinking this because you're tired and groggy. You're not like a tired and groggy person, Or like if I ever got irritated or angry at something, I'm like, oh, that thought is directly attributed to like this feeling, like just come back to center. Like you're not actually a mad, angry person. You're just having that thought, like whatever. And so like that started happening enough to the point where I was like, cool, man, you're doing some things not for you. Like you're doing it for that social validation. And like, there was a good stretch of time where I didn't post on social media, and like I like keeping my friends up to date with what I'm doing because I like when they do the same, and it's very authentic. But I kind of wanted to challenge myself in the sense that's like, all right, just hold off and like just see if you're really doing these things for you, like really, really, really.
Right.
And yeah, I saw a lot of positive growth from that, and sort of this transition back from New Zealand into my old life essentially was strange because I kind of came back like this more clear-minded individual who was more aware of himself and what he wanted to do and what made him truly happy. And what was interesting is that everything here stayed the same, or at least it felt like it. And so like people were treating me like the Gage in May and not like this version of myself who I saw that I was like becoming. And that's not like, oh, I made this crazy drastic change. It's like, no, I just started noticing a couple of things and was like, cool, let's tweak those. And
right, but you also worked at it.
I tried to.
Yeah, so I think that's a huge thing. People stay ignorant to the world around them to the point where, they like don't. I don't know, like they don't want to be aware because of feelings that it might kill the ego or it might.
There's a lot of resistance there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, I do want to, I'm sure you don't want to brag, but you did work at it, and I think that's awesome. You got that mental clarity because you did, something that a lot of people don't do, and you did grow as a person.
Thank you. Yeah. And what was cool too is that, like, truthfully, I did not have a bad day for like the first 3 months at least of being back from New Zealand, because it got to the point where I was really aware of what I had control over and what I didn't. And so, like, if something bad were to happen, I say the word bad loosely because that's also just kind of like a very general term, but if something bad were to happen or inherently, like, negative, I'll just be like, cool, well, that's out of my control.
Yeah, which a lot of people have a hard...
What are you going to do about it anyways? Like, you kind of just have to accept when things are out of your control and they happen. Like, it happened, But if it's something I could control or can control, it's like, cool, let's do something about it. And then maybe if I, like, failed at something or fucked up, it's like, cool, it happened. What are you going to do now? And it's, like, being very aware of, like, when your mind is going into those rabbit holes of, like, damn, you fucked up. You could have done this different, whatever. That's where meditation helps, because you notice when you're going down that rabbit hole and you bring it back and you're like, no, you're not like that. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, you don't let yourself go to that rabbit hole just because, like you said, you center yourself. So I think... Yeah, that's crazy. I hope a lot of people, or whoever listens to this, try those techniques, or just bringing yourself back to center, realizing that you don't have to, you're not your thoughts kind of thing. And, you can change the world around you just by your thinking, or you don't have to give in to the world around you, but just because, certain things happen. A lot of things, like traffic, pisses me off a lot. And sure. So then I get in my head kind of. But I do try to, say, oh, maybe, that person's having a bad day. That's not on me kind of thing. So I just try to. Yeah.
It's a lot hard. Of that. Oh, dude, it's super hard. And that's like, it's one of those things where, like, if everybody around you is thinking sort of this way, naturally you're going to just sort of follow that. And so, like, if, like, getting stuck in traffic because you're in this sort of lifestyle that's like, you got to be here, 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 and here. Like, you have to always be going somewhere. You always got to be thinking. You got to be making moves. And if you get slowed down and you have that resistance, like, it's going to be resistance. You're going to act sort of negatively towards that. Because that's just kind of what we're taught as a society. And it's just sort of like our natural impulse to that stuff. But, yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you just learn to be in the moment, be patient. And it's like, cool, that dude cut me off. It happened, it's like, exactly. Is it actually okay if I'm 5 seconds, later to this thing I'm going to? And, yeah, I don't know. It's just a different way of thinking. But, I mean, I agree with you, too. I totally get pissed off in traffic sometimes. I'm not, when I talk about this stuff, everybody, I'm not perfect. I get mad in traffic, too, so.
Exactly. And I think, that just shows you are, or who you are as a person, kind of showing or saying that, yeah, I'm not perfect, but I'm continuing to grow as a person, because, like I've been saying, a lot of people don't even take that first step to kind of, reflect on who they actually are. One thing that I was going to say just about, meditation and whatnot is you had talked about how things became almost clearer in the everyday, even when you weren't meditating. And that's kind of what I felt, because I've been working on, I really do struggle with, like, looking too far into the past and looking too far into the future, and it gives me a lot of anxiety. So, but as I've been, centering my mind and doing even 10-minute meditations, it's like I have more control over my thoughts, and
that's the key word there, control. Right. Yeah, you start to feel like you have control over your thoughts. Yeah,
and it's crazy because a lot of I struggle, or I don't really struggle, but I'm always, food has always been kind of your food for everybody, it seems, unless you're like some, I don't know, there's like impulses, like you want to eat, or you want to eat junk food and whatnot.
Totally.
And for me, that's always been kind of like a big deal. And since I've been doing these meditations, it's just like, I don't have urges that I used to anymore. And so I think that's crazy to like recognize, reflect, and be like, damn, that's so good job, like, to myself.
Totally, yeah.
Like,
no, you should be proud of that, man.
Right.
That's cool. Like, that's a milestone.
Right, and that's how exactly, and I think that's just what people need to realize as well. Like, you might not notice, or you should try and notice the little things, because they can snowball into just bigger and bigger things, and take it as motivation rather than, I'm going slow or I'm progressing slow kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, no, I 100% agree. And what's cool about that too is that only happens if you reflect on what you did, you know? You can't just always be looking ahead. Like sometimes it's cool to be like, cool, this is where we've been. This is how far we've come. Because that gives you a lot of perspective in a very positive way. Like I look back on my experience in New Zealand as both being very positive and very negative. Like there were times down there where I was super alone and I was like, fuck, like I miss my friends, you know, people challenging me, because it's tough. Like when you're the only one, like it takes a lot of discipline to try to just challenge yourself, you know?
Oh, definitely.
And it was to the point where I'm like, damn, like I miss the people back home, you know, because they're super special. And like I just haven't met a lot of people like that. And yeah, it's stuff like that that I feel like once, however low your well is, inversely is how high you can be.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like, if that's how far away you are from even, think about how far you can go up here. Like that, I feel like is directly, that's, so not like hypocritical, but like opposite, directly inversely related. No, it's inversely related, because like only when you can fully realize how bad or negative something is, like how much you can appreciate the good. And that's why like going through hard shit makes you appreciate other stuff more.
Definitely.
Know? Like kind of seeing those spectrums and reflecting on that.
Oh, you gotta. I mean, you gotta feel the low to like appreciate the high kind of thing. And I think that's. I think about, when I used to think about shallow people, I used to think about shallow in a sense of they're self-centered kind of thing. When I think about shallow people now, I think about it's almost like I want to help them, because I think that they don't have that depth to them that they might be able to feel as much as, and I don't want to sound like arrogant, but as much as I feel, because, you know, I have hit, you know, lows, but it's let me appreciate those highs. So I just want to like to tell people, you know, it's okay to be sad, because you got to be sad at some point to be happy.
Yeah,
so.
And like it's also completely okay to be at different points of life and like mentally than other people.
Oh,
you know?
definitely.
That's why like you just shouldn't compare yourself to other people. You know, if somebody's in a low spot and I'm not in a low spot, that doesn't make me any better or more of a person than that. You know, I feel like life very much gives you the minimum effective dose of what you need to learn something. And if you don't choose to learn it, or you're not looking to learn it, you're going to keep repeating it until it starts screaming in your face, you know? I'm trying to think of a really good example of that, but I guess one I could think of is like parking tickets, for example. Like if you get a parking ticket and that's your minimum effective dose of life being like, all right, dude, get your shit together, start plugging your meters. And you don't pay that, all of a sudden you get another ticket, and that starts snowballing, and you still don't really learn the lesson of like, dude, just tie up your loose ends so like you don't have anything coming back to bite you in the ass. All of a sudden you get the boot and you have to pay $250 to get your car, and you're like, shit, okay, that's the breaking point. I learned I'm not going to do that again. But like life gives you that minimum effective dose of what you need, and you can choose to ignore it or learn from it. But eventually it'll start screaming until you learn that lesson, you know?
Right.
And sometimes it's just different amounts for different people, and yeah, it's not anything to ever judge yourself for, you know.
So how do you think that you take those signs, or how do you think you've been able to recognize signs that the universe might give you that kind of, you know, like you were saying, that's some people might think it's a silly example, the car meter thing, but it's really not. Like if you don't, little things I think show a lot about a person, whether that be holding doors open for people and paying parking tickets. You know, things
making
like
your bed, even.
Exactly, things like
really
that.
Small shit. Yeah.
So, I guess that doesn't really have to do with the question of how you pick up things from the universe. But are there any instances that, well, I guess when you do see a small sign, do you kind of just try and recognize that like right on the dot? Do you kind of think about it?
Well, it's tough, man. I mean, like they're getting a lot of stimuli and a lot of things every day. It's hard to be like, ooh, this is exactly this lesson.
Right,
this is exactly that lesson. Like it's super tough. And I'm not like super good at it, but I think I'll start to recognize things here and there where I'm like, oh, okay, you want me to go that way? Okay, yeah. And I'll start like going that way, because I'm like, naturally that feels right. I would say the biggest thing is take chances, see how it goes.
And I think that's perfect, because, you know, so you might have a sign and you're like, okay, this is a sign, or you don't have to like consciously say that, but and then you do this. it might go one of two ways. It's going to go well or it's going to go bad, and you're going to learn from it and be able to, you win or you learn kind of thing.
Totally.
Like you're going in a great direction, or you're going to hit a stopping point, and you're going to, like you use the word pivot, which I commend you for, because that's an entrepreneurship word. So
right
and
on.
you're going to, change directions and kind of go the opposite direction.
I mean, it's not even a win-lose, it's a learn.
Exactly.
Like if you win, you're like, cool, I learned that it worked. And if you don't, you're like, cool, I learned that it didn't work.
Exactly.
How are you going to make it work?
Yeah,
and
so
like,
either keep doing it kind of thing or stop.
I mean, the moral of the story is do something, like just do something. Because if you're moving, you're going to be directed in a direction, And sometimes life will take you in this place that's super shitty so that it's not super shitty anymore.
Right.
And like one perfect example of that is like this robbery that happened, or this theft or burglary that happened to us this past summer in like late June. It was about roughly half of my Greenstain inventory was like trashed and stolen, and a lot of personal items from our office were stolen, and my buddy Noah had a bunch of music equipment stolen. And like there were vividly 2 days where I was like, oh fuck, like stare at the wall, like why is this happening to me type shit for like hours, like, oh my God, this is like, what are we gonna do? Like, this is my business, this is how I make money, like what the fuck am I gonna do? How am I gonna get out of this? But because of that instance, I hit the drawing board again, and I was like, cool, let's find a model for Greenstain that doesn't have to just deal with inventory. Like, what are some ways to problem solve out of this so that this either couldn't happen again, or like just like what can you learn from this? I feel like I'm just that type of person that's like, I will get down, but like, are you gonna stay down there, or are you gonna be like, cool, let's do something about it?
So
like,
you say you say you're that type of person, and that's kind of what I want to hit on. So do you think you learn to be that type of person? Do you think you were born to be that type of person? Because a lot of people are either A, not going to start a venture, or try to progress themselves / humanity, or B, do you think or B, the person is going to hit that wall, that robbery's going to happen, they're going to be like, I'm done. Sure. That's it.
Totally. Yeah. I don't think I was always that way. I think there came a turning point where I started to respect myself enough to the point where it was like, dude, you deserve better than this, And for that burglary, for example, when I was super down for those couple days, it got to the point mentally where I was like, dude, are you going to stay here, or do you respect yourself enough to get out of this and to forcefully get yourself in a better place? And so what I did was like, cool, I'm going to be successful because of whoever robbed this, and I'm going to talk about it someday, and they're going to hear it and be like, ah, shit, that is not what I wanted to happen when I initially, stole their shit. And like, that's super motivating. Like, I like being the underdog sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, more so to answer your question, I would say like having the self-respect to know that you deserve better than the situation you're in.
That's cool. Yeah. And finding, I think it's hard for a lot of people to find motivation in situations that might seem dull or dark, but that's cool that you did use that you use that instance as motivation instead of, letting it kind of kick you back into the dumps.
Totally.
So
yeah.
that's,
I mean, it definitely helped having one of my good buddies, Noah Thornton, like with me and like going through the same shit, because for him, he's an audio engineer, and he mixes and produces and writes his own music. And so like that is his craft, like that is his therapy, that is his life. And like if you take the tools away from him to do that, you're taking everything from him, you're taking like his sole purpose from him. And so like him and I very much resonated on like a different level of like what we were going through. And so like even just having that and having somebody to go through that with helped a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said to have, someone I think you bond with people that you struggle with, kind of thing.
I would completely agree with that. Yeah.
It doesn't make the situation any easier, but it does help to get out of the situation, kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think that's awesome, and I think that's finding. It goes back to something that I've talked about in other podcasts, is just finding a community of people that you resonate with, that you kind of have the same mindset as. And
truly. Yeah.
So it brings me to a question: when you did come back from New Zealand and you were this kind of different person, did you change friend groups completely, or did you kind of separate yourself from, and you don't have to get into it too much, but did you separate yourself from people that you recognize maybe weren't going down the same path as you?
Sure. So I kept the same friend group, and that's because those people are so special, and like there's a reason why I chose to have that type of relationship with them, you know? Because what's cool about meeting friends in college is it's not like the people you grew up with. Like, you're like, I kind of like what you're doing over there, and they're like, well, I kind of like what you're doing over there, and you're like, you want to hang out sometime? You know, it's cool. It's like a two-way street. Like, you mutually are like, cool, like let's grow as people. And what kind of helped too is my living situation. So I ended up taking like a one-man back in our fraternity house at Beta. And so like that helped to kind of separate myself from the other just shit that was going on. And yeah, I think it was more so how I handled different situations that kind of showed them like over a couple of weeks of like, oh, he just doesn't fuck with that stuff, or he's not like as late to things or whatever. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of small things that happen where they're kind of like, oh, yeah, like we haven't seen you in a while. Now you're acting this way. Like, cool. And like I think like the general environment I was in was like very accepting of that.
Yeah, and that's cool to find those people that, you know, are accepting and you are around to, you know, help you grow and whatnot. And I think that there's a lot to be said for, like you were saying, like people that you meet outside of your immediate friend group, like back home kind of thing.
Totally.
Because when I went to New Zealand, I kind of fell into a group of guys who all forever considered my best friends and, you know, family. And it was my first time kind of ever finding friends on my own kind of thing, because I had been throughout my whole early childhood, I was definitely not forced to hang out with anybody, and I loved my friends, and I still do. They're great people, but in New Zealand, I was able to, like you said, I was like, yo, I like what you guys are doing. Yeah. Like and that's like, whoa. Exactly. It feels right. So, and that's what I did, and you know, and I still think, you know, like I said, I was able, or like you were saying, I was able to be my true self there, and without any judgment or
right on, man.
You know, find who I wanted to be, kind of thing.
Sure.
So that was
awesome.
You know, yeah, that was super cool to have. So we did definitely have a little bit different experiences in New Zealand, but that's cool. That
totally, yeah, you know, no, absolutely, yeah, and it's cool too. Even when we were talking the other day, like just hearing about some of the places you went, and I was like, oh yeah, we were totally in similar parts of Auckland. Like, that's a trip, because I felt like I was in my own little world down there, and to hear other people talk about that is like, it's a trip.
Yeah. Oh, definitely it is. Like it's a big world, but it's small and
totally
the same breath. So I think that's awesome. So
well, right on, man.
I want to talk a little bit about, because I'm definitely not done picking your brain about Greenstain and just the environment, because like I said, I have questions, or a lot of my anxiety arises from the future as well as the past, but the future, because, you know, even with these wildfires that are just happening or not wildfires, but fires in the Amazon, to wildfires in other parts of the world, it's kind of like a, you know, why am I doing what I'm doing if the world, you know, might not see
it's like actually burning,
right? That's what I'm saying, kind of thing. So and you talked about it a little bit when we were talking about Greenstain earlier, but what's your goal with Greenstain as a whole? Is there an end goal with it?
Totally. What's interesting is about that, I feel like I get that question quite a bit, and what I usually respond with is that I've set up a framework to create very positive outcomes. I don't know exactly what those are going to be in 5 to 10 years, because I feel like it's always going to change and evolve in different ways. But the main driving force behind that framework is showing people what they're capable of as far as an impact, whether that's environmentally, financially, socially, or just with their own health. Because sustainability contributes to all of those sectors, because it's just a win-win. It's just a smarter way of doing things. But our goal is to show people like that their small actions add up and can actually make a difference, you know? And I feel like there's just so much clutter and so much noise about the environment and different problems that people are like, I don't even know what to believe. I don't even know what the hell's going on, because everything is so interconnected. And I'm like, and people are always like, yeah, the planet is in this climate crisis, but it is so complex that like, what can I do?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So how do you stay optimistic? How do you stay motivated for, like you had talked about earlier, with the bleak future that is out there?
We don't have any other option.
Okay, that's a perfect answer. You know, short and sweet. I think that's a really cool answer, and I hope a lot of people take that straight at face value and run with it, because we don't,
I don't have any other option then.
Yeah, we're here for the time being, so we might as well, keep on rocking. And that's kind of what I think with Coffee with Demons is, when I do think about, why am I doing, or why am I not doing this, or, just going off and saying, fuck everything, I'm going to do wild shit and be happy for the time being. But I think hopefully what I'm doing is kind of setting, improving one, even if it's just one person's life. I think that's a win, and hopefully that just keeps going and going, whether
absolutely
there's an end goal or not, kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So with the environment, I do have a couple questions. Is that what do you, or to not make it too general, do you know, like, what did they teach you in school? Because I know it was your major. Yeah. Was it kind of like, this is an urgent thing, or was it more scholarly, and you were kind of like, they wanted you to think that it could change?
Totally. Yeah. So the environmental studies program is very interesting in the sense it's very educational, but it goes a lot into like specific natural resources. So whether that's water, soil, agriculture. I took an ecology class that basically talked about how certain organisms adapt in certain environments, and just sort of trying to understand the environment in a system sense, and not just that it's one thing, but it's a lot of things very interconnected working together, and how basically what the curriculum was is like, how if you change one thing, how does that kind of impact these other things? And so starting off with sort of like the base level of like, this is your water, this is your soil, here's how they interact, add life into that, here's how it interacts, add bigger organisms, whatever, here's how they all interact. And then it got to the point where like we started talking about, climate, things like climate change, and more of how you throw economics and like social policies and health into the mix, and how it just fucking gets crazy from there, And so a lot of what we talked about was thinking about sustainability in that system sense. Yes, the saving the environment is the outcome, but like in the process, how do we make it a win-win for everybody? Because like if we put all of our money towards saving the environment right now, the environment would get saved, but like you would take away from things like healthcare and other like social and economic policies that keep people living happy and healthy lives, And so it's just kind of like trying to find the best win-win there.
So with Greenstain, do you think that Greenstain covers a lot of those? Like you were saying, there's different segments. Do you think Greenstain is hitting multiple different areas of that?
I think it will. And, you got to start somewhere, and no matter how small. And like the biggest thing I'm sure you've been taught to in a lot of your entrepreneurial classes is that you got to get a minimum viable product. Mm-hmm. You have to get bare bones something out there so that you can get feedback on it, and you can tweak it and you can grow. Because whatever you do is not going to be perfect. And whatever you do is going to change once it hits the market and people start using it or learning from it.
Right.
In any capacity. And so with Apparel, that was our good start to be like, cool, this is working. How do we more so tailor our products to this vision we have for Greenstain? How do we tailor content to it so we're educating people in a format that is hopeful and empowering rather than degrading? Like I've seen a lot of t-shirts that like say this isn't Uranus, so stop, like this planet isn't Uranus, so stop treating it like such, know. But it kind of puts a certain type of people in a higher spot than others, because it's like, hey, we're in this bigger place because you're acting this certain way, and that's not the approach we want to take with it. So yeah, I think once we more so dive into some deeper content, we get some other products out there, and we can start talking about other issues because we have products to tie directly back sort of as a solution to the problem we're preaching. I think that's where it could really grow into a lot of those different social, economic sort of categories.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, from just a layman's mind point of view, I think it hits a lot of those right off the bat, like the environment side. But you're also doing you're trying to help or sustain the economy with just because it's it's a product and you're putting it out there for people. So
yeah, and that was the biggest thing with our t-shirts too, is we wanted to show people that just because it's an environmentally sustainable or eco-friendly solution doesn't mean it's more expensive. Like our shirts are the same cost as other shirts, but they're using recycled plastic bottles and we'll plant a tree. Like, we want to give you the path of least resistance to choosing that smarter option. And it's not just for business for us, but it's just showing that there's a better way of doing something.
So are you taking a hit for that, or is Greenstain taking a hit for that? Like, I'll ask that question when we get back
when
after
we
this.
return from
Yes,
the break.
Exactly.
Right on.
I hope you enjoy what you're listening to, but don't forget that Coffee with Demons is more than just a podcast. Head on over to www.coffeewithdemons.com to check out news on our meetings, new blogs, and even new podcasts. Thank you. All right, so the question I was in the middle of asking was basically, do you guys incur more cost because your t-shirts are, more eco-friendly kind of thing? So like you said, you were selling them at the same price, or they don't cost more than other t-shirts, but is that, are you taking that on you guys, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, so when I say they kind of cost the same as other t-shirts, so like our tri-blends cost more than like a traditional cotton shirt, but that's because the tri-blend fiber is more of a quality premium product. And so like ours are priced roughly the same as other tri-blends, and the cost to manufacture those shirts is roughly the same. It's just adding that tree planting aspect kind of decreases our profit margins a little bit. But like, again, like, we're not doing it for the money.
Right.
The reason we are a for-profit business is it gives us a lot more flexibility to use that money in other ways and to create a sort of like sustainable model for a business. So rather than just like getting money from donations or grants or like those other sources, and finding something that works and changes culture and people, and because at the end of the day, like, I'm not doing it for the money. Like, I'm not getting a paycheck from Greenstain right now. And kind of like what we were talking about earlier. So I just recently accepted a job at Archrival, which is like a creative ad agency. And what's stellar about that, I'll say a couple of things about that. So 3 weeks ago, if you would ask me what I've been doing right now, I'd say I'm still going full time with Greenstain, with the team we have, and we're kicking ass. But life throws different things at you, and
for sure,
like, my intuition, once I kind of heard about this position that was opening up, was like, dude, you got to take that. Like, you could learn and grow so much from this company who works with amazing brands, and they have amazing talent, and they have just such an amazing culture that's so unique and against the grain and unconventional. You could learn a ton from that. And like, you're probably going to get some flack from people that are like, well, I thought you were doing Greenstain only, and now you got this other job you've been seeing, But it's one of those things where it's like, no, I understand that, but I'm going to grow a lot in that environment, and I'm going to be able to sustain myself financially from that while working on Greenstain and making that grow. It's going to take a lot more grind and hustle, but it's to the point where like, it's for my benefit and it's for Greenstain's benefit. And then hopefully it's for Archrival's benefit too. Like, I hope I can help them a ton along the way. And so what's cool about that is that all of the money that we're making in Greenstain, I can keep in Greenstain and keep circulating in there and investing back into the company. I don't have to be taking paychecks from it. So I'm not getting paid to do Greenstain right now, which I like, because it allows us to do more things as a company and grow in different areas and invest in different products and solutions. So yeah, I guess going back to your original question, our profit margins are a little less from the shirts, but the impact is more and worth it.
Definitely. And I think, the ideal guest for the Coffee with Demons podcast is someone who, in a sense, just has their shit together and is working towards something better, not just bettering themselves. And I think that's perfect. Like, you're doing something that's helping so many people, helping the earth, which helps everybody basically. So, and to take even the smallest hit some people wouldn't do, if they were going to start a business, it would just be, just for the paycheck kind of thing. And it just, and then starting the full-time job on top of that, I think that just shows, again, who you are as a person, just, how much you do have to grind. And I don't think some people even understand the time that you've put into Greenstain and the time that you're continuing to put into Greenstain, and now, like, spreading yourself to your other job as well, just how hard that is. So, like,
I appreciate the hell out of that, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You.
Mad props for, like, that's...
It's a lot of hours behind the scenes, but, like, I like doing it, and it's very motivating to be making a difference, And I think a lot of people feel that, and I feel like a lot of people, that's why they're doing what they're doing, is because they feel like they're making a difference. And I feel that every day, and I like what I do, and I am glad that me from the past kind of set me up for this so that I could be doing what I like to do all the time. Just super grateful for the situation I'm in.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit how you got into that situation and the techniques / ways or things that you took away from your trip to New Zealand and how you kind of integrated those into your lifestyle now and the changes you've made to, like you said, set yourself up.
Totally. Yeah. So during the school year, so this past school year from August to May, my senior year, it was a lot easier to integrate those habits when you have like a stable living environment and like food is set up for you consistently, because we had like a meal plan at Beta, and you're with your friends all the time and you're in this environment to where like you don't have to worry about the small stuff like where am I going to sleep tonight, and so you can focus on those other things of like, cool, intellectually, how do I want to grow professionally and as a person. And after May, once my friend Noah Thorne and I got this sublease in Lincoln for 2 months, we kind of were in this weird transitional period to where like I was sleeping on couches for 2 weeks with my just boxes of shirts, at people's house. Shout out Merritt Lane. I love you, brother. Thank you for letting me do that. But yeah, just trying to like still grind, but like not even really have a bed or like a place to put your stuff or like call yours. It was weird for a while. And so like we got into this sublease in this new office where Noah had a studio and I had my Greenstain office, and we were grinding up there, putting out some consistent content, and then that theft happened and sort of put a huge jumble into everything. And so we couldn't work at that office anymore for a variety of reasons. And all of a sudden we're like, well, shit, what are we going to do now? We don't have a place to work. We kind of have this place to live for like another 3 weeks. Like it's just another weird limbo period. And then even the first couple of weeks in August, like I was sleeping on people's couches until I kind of found a place to live and like a place to put my things. And Noah and I had planned on going to Omaha together to grow Greenstain and pursue his music career, but I was like, I'm having this natural intuition that I need to stay in Lincoln a little longer. I don't know why, but like all the arrows are just pointing to staying here, but all the arrows are pointing you to go there. So we were in this weird transition period where he was going to Omaha, I was staying in Lincoln, and during all of this time I did not keep up with those habits I had in New Zealand. Like I was not meditating every day. I wasn't doing yoga every day. My whole life was just shit hitting the fan constantly. I don't know where I'm staying, where all my stuff is, and just a lot on my mind. And so like I would say within the past 2 weeks after I finally kind of got like a bedroom with all of my stuff and like a place to put all my Greenstain gear and like some nice habits set up again, once you have kind of like your living situation figured out and you kind of start surrounding yourself with that group of people that's going to stay there for like kind of the foreseeable future, I would say it's a lot easier to then go back to those habits. So Definitely. Like I've then recently in the past couple of weeks picked up yoga again, picked up meditation again, and like I'm already starting to see those benefits.
Did you feel the lack of those benefits during this? Yeah. So
I
on
did.
Your like psyche or your
absolutely, yeah.
mental state.
And I was trying to attribute that to the situation I was in, and I was like, dude, you're also in control of the way you think. So what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And then it was like, okay, that's right. Well, you've got yourself out of situations like this mentally before. The external environment is completely different. The situation is completely different, but like try to tap back into that. So like I got out my journal from New Zealand and reread all my notes and everything that I took down there, and I was like, oh, you used to be smarter, man. What the hell are you doing? So yeah, I started to get back into it, and it's a lot noticeable again. So I guess just for the listeners, like life will throw shit at you, but like no, in the end, like you are in control to an extent. It takes a lot of practice of like what you think and how you choose to internalize the things that are happening around you.
And it gives validity to yourself and to to the listeners. Like you've been in, like you said, you got back from New Zealand and you did those habits and you were in such a good place, and then when things started to go downhill and you maybe weren't doing those things, how that does affect
totally
the things in your everyday life kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
and what's crazy is like when shit starts to go downhill, that's when you need to keep doing those habits the most.
It's also when they're the hardest though, for
exactly
sure.
Yeah exactly. But I mean that's exactly why you need to do them. But that's when they're the hardest, and it's tough, man. But again, like I feel like life gives you that minimum effective dose of what you need to learn something. And for me, it was like you start to go downhill and you stop doing those habits, it's going to get to that breaking point where it's like, oh, shit, okay, I get it.
Right.
All right, I'll
Yeah.
start doing that again.
And it's just kind of it's trying to find that, you know, that sweet medium where you don't have to get such a slap in the face kind of thing. But
Totally, yeah.
But it's
You can hear the whispers rather than the
Right.
screaming and roundhouse
Exactly.
kick to the face.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. You hear the whispers rather than the screaming.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of now moving forward with Greenstain and keeping up with just your, you know, your new job and whatnot, are there things that you think there's struggles or resistance there's struggles and resistance, roadblocks in everybody's life every day, but are there any that you foresee that you're, you know, kind of bracing yourself for?
Totally. I feel like anytime, and I'm sure like any music artist will tell you this, but every time you put out an album, you're expected to top that with your next album.
Right.
And so it's the point where like every day now that I show up for work, whether that be Greenstain or Arch Rival, like I'm held to this standard of what I've done in the past, and I need to be at that or better. And so like I even internally I'm like holding myself to this expectation of like you have to wake up and be a better person than you were yesterday. And that can be very intimidating, and like that it's in itself is super daunting and mentally draining to like think that you have to be at your best all the time.
For sure.
You know, because people hold this sort of vision of you, you know. And like when you're late for stuff and like when you have to let people down, like that shit sucks, you know, because it makes you feel like, oh fuck, like I'm not being held to that standard that like these people are holding me to, or I'm holding myself to. And that could be a real challenge. And I definitely see that like being a challenge moving forward. And it's not that like I'm crazy successful or in this crazy awesome place, but like I'm trying to work towards this ideal version of myself, you know, and I feel like I'm on a good path. And yeah, I don't know. I could see there just one of the main challenges being like a lot of social pressure from that.
Yeah, and I think social pressure is, you know, one of the main things I deal with, more so from my family, just because they know me the best kind of thing, and I don't ever want to let them down, and I want to do what they think I can do and what they think that my potential is. So that's always in my head. But with that being said, I don't think that it's a bad thing to, you know, not regress, but you know, take a step back and maybe not lay low, but chill out kind of thing.
Totally.
And be like, yo, I was doing a lot of shit kind of thing, and it was really well, and in this, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is you don't have to get down on yourself kind of for, you know, being not as successful or not as busy or, you know, what kind of thing. So a lot of what I try to think about is like you're not held to the person you were 5 minutes ago, whether that be your thoughts, actions. You can people are always changing, so you can always be, you know, who you want to be in that moment kind of thing.
Yeah, that was a huge thing I recognized when I released that first iteration of Greenstain back in October with the whole affiliate marketing for Amazon. Is like I made a massive surge and post about that day, and I didn't talk about Greenstain on any social media channel until at least January or February.
Right.
And like during that time, it was kind of like November, December started rolling around. I'm like, oh, people don't give a shit anymore. Like, nice. Like, they will really only, like, if I did something and came back and made it, they'd be like, oh, cool. Literally none of that time mattered because you're doing this now. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, it doesn't, if you fuck up today, it doesn't matter, because in 2 months, if you redeem yourself,
right,
then it doesn't matter. You know, it's about what you do and where you go from there, you know, because nobody's going to give a shit unless you do something, you know.
And I think a lot of people think that, you know, people care more than they actually do. Like, what I'm trying to say is, like, I have this idea that people are always, or not me myself, but, you know, some people, like, people are always watching you. When you're walking through the mall, eyes are on you.
Yeah, totally.
But when I'm walking through the mall, I don't care about anybody else, you know, kind of thing.
The ego,
so yeah, like the bystander effect, you know, kind of thing. Like, people don't probably care as much as you think. So you're the one that's putting the most pressure on yourself in most situations. And I think that's what I mean, I still have a hard time with it. Like, I put so much pressure on myself, and most of the people that, you know, probably look at what I'm doing are probably like, oh, you know, at least he's doing something. But in my mind, I'm like, fuck, what could I be doing more kind of thing.
Totally, yeah.
So it's always hard,
It's a constant battle, man.
It is truly a constant battle.
It's a constant balance.
Yeah, definitely. So since you've got back into the, your kind of groove, your meditation things, what are your just simple outlets that when you're not thinking about Greenstain, when you're not thinking about work, are there things that you do for Gage?
Totally. It's tough to go through a day without thinking about art travel and Greenstain. But I would say it, like, being with people, or like finding the things and people to be with that make me feel present. So like I don't even have an option to think about Greenstain and art travel because I'm so present with these people,
right,
and doing these things. And I attribute a lot of that to my friend group that I hang around now, and like music. I'll listen to music a lot and play guitar. I'm part of a band called Free Mind, and like it's just a really great group of dudes who are on the same wavelength about making music. And so like even like playing with them and being in that environment just completely zones me out from everything else, and specifically those other businesses. And sometimes to a fault, where like I will ignore my phone for a little bit because I'm being so present, and like that can be addicting when your mind is just racing like
right,
at all times of the day. You're like, I need to just a second. Like you're always on the clock and you got stuff to do, and so it's like finding a healthy balance between being present with that stuff, and then we're also working on being present and with Greenstain and our tribal, and knowing when to step away from those, and keeping that balance. I feel like everything is just a very fluid balance, but it takes a lot of figuring out.
Definitely. So one thing that I picked up from your podcast on how to build an airplane was this idea that you have to be selfish and you have to give yourself 100% before you can give someone else 100%. So
yeah, I love that.
Like if you're, I might be able to hang out with you right now, but I'm not going to be completely there mentally. I'm not going to be like present. I'm going to be thinking about other things. I'm going to be thinking about what I have to do. So if I take the time to take care of those things beforehand, then that's just going to make the experience that I have, with my friends, family, totally, that much better.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely have to be selfish before you can truly be selfless. And what I mean by that is that if you don't give yourself 100%, how are you going to give other people 100%? Mm-hmm. Like and I've seen a lot of really awesome, kind-hearted people try to give themselves to others, but it's so draining that they have nothing left to give, and they're just sort of like this like mentally taxed person that's like, I'm like trying to help you, but like I haven't been sleeping well or eating well or any of these basic things. It's like, no, just get your health up,
Right.
If you take this time for yourself to find balance in your life and create this best version of yourself, then you can give that to other people. Like you're doing them a service by taking care of yourself.
Definitely.
Like I think that's super important.
Definitely. And I think that's the way. If you're somebody who always is doing something for other people and neglecting yourself, I think that's maybe a new way to look at it is, I got to do things for other people. I need to take care of myself first, whether that's, like you said, sleep is, I think, huge. I think a healthy diet's huge, and just being to attain that
totally
mental stability kind of thing.
It's a lot of those basic things that, like, when you get like a decent night's sleep, not anything great, and then you have like some okay meals but not anything super nutritious, you're like, well, I feel fine. And it's like, yeah, you do, but like get super healthy, and then you'll be like, oh shit, right, I could have been doing that the whole time.
Right.
Like once you start getting 9 hours of sleep, 8 to 9 hours of sleep, 8 is a lot more realistic. Once you start getting 8 hours of sleep regularly, going to bed and waking up at the same times without your alarm, because your body's just naturally set to that, you're eating very nutritious meals throughout the day, maybe doing intermittent fasting, whatever works best for your body. I feel like a different person.
Exactly.
And you add in yoga and like some other physical training to that, to where like you just feel physically lighter and less tension in your body. You will like not want to stop. Like that's a drug in itself, because you feel better from that stuff.
Definitely. And I think, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about could seem like foo-foo to some people kind of thing. Like whether that be, the feeling of being lighter and being healthy. But that's because I just want everyone to have an open mind kind of thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I implore people to try new things, because you might think you're okay, like you were saying. You might think you're like getting enough sleep, but
because you're like, I'm functioning.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm awake.
But that's you could be close to the bottom kind of thing, and there's so much more room to grow.
Totally.
Whether that's in your head, whether that's your your health. But
I wish there was like some sort of scenario to where like you could make somebody feel like what they would feel like in 2 months if they got adequate sleep and a healthy diet. If all of a sudden it was like, and you feel like that, they'd be like, oh shit, okay, that's a big difference. Yeah, let's get adequate sleep and get our diet right for like 2 months. Like, I think that would be super cool and just show a lot of perspective for people.
It would, and I think perspective is a great word, and could be used, like, just get different perspectives, whether that be, changing your diet, just feel different things to know what feels the best, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and whether that be like traveling, travel to find different perspective of the world, travel to find different perspective of, your lifestyle and how you're living, because until you step outside of your comfort zone or in just your box or your surrounding, your bubble, you might think that you're living life the best way, but there could be, like we've been saying, exponentially better ways to, go about things kind of thing.
Yeah, so. I definitely agree. Yeah, and it's, I totally agree. Yeah.
So, unless you have anything, we'll kind of start to wrap things up. Do you have any other big topic points?
No, nothing any major right now. We covered a lot of ground, man.
Right,
Thinking back through it.
Yeah,
doing
for
a
sure.
little reflecting, having some perspective there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it goes quick. So,
yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on. This has been awesome. Like I said, I was super nervous for this one, and I've actually been, doing good.
Well, that makes me feel good, brother. Yeah. I've enjoyed it.
And like I said, Gage was somebody who I wanted to have on the podcast before I even had an episode out. So this has been a long time coming, and I hope to have you, back on once Greenstain, once we're both further down the road in our life's journey. So plug a little bit for Greenstain. Let people know where they can find your stuff. Let people know your social media handles, because I'd love to, I'm not the type of person to promote something that I don't believe in, kind of thing. And I think Greenstain is 100% how, it's an ideal company. So
thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure. I love
truly,
what you're doing.
I appreciate the hell out of that. Thank you. Yeah, you can find Greenstain on Instagram at Greenstain_environmental. We kind of put a team together now, so we've got 4 part-time employees and then 4 other interns that are seniors in high school right now on top of myself.
Dope.
And so that's awesome, because we'll finally have this well-oiled machine to consistently be pumping out content and always innovating and working on the next thing. For Instagram, you can find us at Greenstain_environmental. Head to our website, greenstain.net, and subscribe to the mailing list. We'll pump out more posts for our blog on more educational content, new deals that are going on. We just had a new line of shirts come out. It's the Green Life collection, trying to do a play on Nebraska's The Good Life.
Which you're wearing right now, right?
Yeah, it is, ironically.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very
so this is one of the tanks, and we've got a long sleeve option, some short sleeve options, and then with this new collection we added two new tank options.
Cool.
So yeah, you can get those designs at greenstain.net, and follow us on Instagram. Those are our main channels right now.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. For as far as Coffee with Demons stuff, we'll be getting out content as much as we can as new podcasts, and I do need to get on my horse with writing some new blogs for you guys. But other than that, hopefully we'll have a meeting here, the first coming up at the end of September. So keep your eyes out for that. I want people to know that the podcast isn't the only place to tell your story. If you have a story that needs to be told, I think the meetings are a perfect place to get those out and help other people. So don't be hesitant to, contact me if you have any questions. I do want to give a shout out again to my man behind the scenes, Jacob. He's been doing awesome. He's been doing great work for me. So thank you for that. And other than that, we will just catch you next time. One more time, Gage Mruz, thank you. This has been, a great conversation. Like I said, definitely not the last one. So
yeah, no, it truly has. I applaud you, man. You're doing great work.
Ditto.
Thanks, man.
For real. So thank you. We'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Coffee with Demons podcast. Don't forget to check out our website at www.coffeewithdemons.com for more information on the Coffee with Demons movement.